Good morning, everybody. Yeah, it is a jacket kind of day because down here it's not getting warm at all. Like it is trying its best. So I went and got a older heater, and hoping, but it's testy because it burns stuff. So um, I'm hoping it works. So if you see me leaning over one direction on occasion, just know that I'm trying to get my hands warmed. It's over here, so I'm trying to get the hands warmed a little. You know those old coil space heaters, like old. We're talking like, when was this one probably made? This thing is at least 8 years because I think I've had it at that long, about 8 years. So it's old. However, um, it's necessary. The wife suggested I use it because I was using a different one. But yeah, so we are. So if you, like, again, disclaimer, if you see me reaching across thusly, and this is also an old jacket. I think I took it from my kid. Um, he's not using it, so might as well be me, right? Well, today we are going to discuss this um, conversation that Joe Rogan had with Wes Huff. Um, I have a different take on Joe Rogan that many may think is unforgiving. Um, but I don't know if it's unforgiving so much as it is being a realist and observing what I see about Joe Rogan. I will make my statements now that Joe Rogan is an extremely intelligent human being. I also would not stand in front of Joe Rogan or behind Joe Rogan, knowing how he kicks. If you've ever seen the video of him doing any kind of kick, I fight, right? But I don't fight like that. I'm not to that level of fighting. That's a whole different level of fighting. This man kicks like a donkey. Okay, he will fold a 200-pound bag with a kick. It's brutal. Okay, so I will make my disclaimer about you now, Joe. Yeah, you smart, very smart. I mean, book smart, socially smart. Get it, and strong as an ox. Got it. However, not all intelligence works out to make you a logical human being. Okay, so not all everybody that has a mass amount of brains are logical, or even do they make sense all the time, and they also do not always follow their own thought processes. Okay, so I found that in this interview with Huff. um Many are saying it's a good thing because Huff finally sat down. Joe Rogan actually had somebody with uh, a grasp on some things that are textual, that are historical, that are factual for him to sit with, and that was an actual Christian. And while that is awesome, I do agree that's good stuff. Yep, okay, awesome stuff. Watch the interview. It's 3 hours long. And what I did notice was what I want to talk about today. And that is Joe Rogan, for all intents and purposes, is only interested, from what I heard, and that's what I'm going on. I don't know his heart. He is only so far interested, based on the questions he's asked, in knowledge. Is it a bad thing? On his face, no. But he's only interested in knowledge and where knowledge can get him, what he can know. Now, he has said before that he is not an atheist, but he also has said, like I said, sometimes the most intelligent people cannot stick to their own theories. Okay. So, in one breath during this interview, he'll talk about Jesus in the most positive light, although he has questions. But his take on Jesus beforehand almost seems to suggest that he shouldn't have questions considering how he spoke. Okay. So, we're going to look at, I had covered him before too, years ago. We're talking 4 years almost now. I covered him. and it because I found a video of him that he did, and it was really. So I'm going to play those for you, and then we're going to go into the discussion about what he actually said on the interview. As far as Wes is concerned, very brilliant mind again as well. And it was good that he was able to talk to Joe about certain things, um, historical documents, how they all link. Very fascinating conversation overall. The veracity of the scripture, and we'll get into Joe's questions about it. And like I say, I think you'll see where my critique lies about it. I'm not wronging Wes by any means by going to talk to him. However, I do understand that there's a limited amount of time, but they spent a lot of time on the the strong suits of Joe Rogan, and it's by design. He knows how to do that. And when by the end of the conversation he gets to the real meat and potatoes of why Wes actually believes and investigates the way he investigates, you see a side of Joe that you don't normally see. Not confident, not willing to really answer, tries to skip around. And so it kind of solidified for me what I am going to present to you as my belief about Joe. Clip number one. I edited the curse words out. I know some people are adverse to hearing it. It doesn't bother me either way. I'm listening for the content. Um, but this was a while back that I found it. So you're looking at easily 9 years old video. And we'll be going through a few of them that are about that old, okay? Considering what they are now. And I want you to hear it, what he says himself.
I know evolution's the wrong word for there, but as it improves and expands, we are no longer accepting the idea of Satan. Yeah. Like culturally, Satan was an accepted thing hundreds of years ago. It was parallel. Like if you looked at the mentions of Satan and the mentions of God, they were right up there together. You're blaming Satan on the bad things and you're praising God for the good things. That's no longer the case. Now we just cling to these absurd notions of this one that's watching us all the time, and you gotta sort of peripherally mention it and casually reference it without going into detail, and you're allowed to do that because it makes people think, well, you're on the same page as me. You're a God-fearing Christian man like myself. I'm a God-fearing Christian man myself as well. God bless you. God bless you as well. But if you go, Satan is looking out for you. Satan is watching you right now. Satan is just letting the air out of your tires. Like, you go, well, that guy's a right. Like we've moved past Satan, but we haven't moved past God.
Okay. Now, again, the intellectuality definitely there. And by the world standards, very articulate about his viewpoint. And again, I want to make sure people understand this is his viewpoint based on the fact that he does not know God. He knows that there might possibly be a God. He knows, he says, that he's not a atheist. He also knows that what he believes is from years of trial and error and understanding or not understanding. So him having this conversation with his people about moving past Satan, how people don't talk about Satan like that anymore, but it's weird that we still talk about God that way, proves to me that he has one very big hang up. He's a man of opposites. He likes to have the, as they would put it for lack of a better term, yin and yang thing. But he also does not give any real credence to the nature of God, even though he says he's not an atheist. He says he's agnostic. But an agnostic is just an undercover atheist that's unwilling to admit to certain things. That's all you are. You're still an atheist. People who are atheists say they don't believe in God, right? Or any gods. Yet and still, they actually do by merit that they hold themselves in that position. So they themselves are God. So they do believe in a God. It's just them. Now, I consider most people atheists who just say, yeah, it's just, there is no God. Okay, no God at all. But with Joe, he says that there has to be creation because this stuff just can't come to be. Saying that there is such a thing as a God versus the God places you in the same position. You just feel like you're different than an atheist because you admit that there might be an entity. But an entity is not the same as God. So in his efforts to say that we have moved past Satan, he's admitting that he still believes in Satan. He is just phased out of what Satan is called into what he regards as himself and knowledge, but that's still Satan. You haven't moved past Satan. Satan has just taken his name out of the equation and replaced it with his mission. That's all that happened. It's like saying the KKK went away. They haven't gone away. All they've done is they've done their job so well that other people are doing it for them without ever even really thinking about it. So why do they need to dress up in hoods and all that? There's no need for that now. We've done our job, and we've done it so proficiently. We're good. Now, I'm going to also say this might run a little long today, so be prepared, okay?
Exactly right.
Yeah. Or the idea of God. Even I mean, if there is some all-knowing entity that is controlling everything and is filled with love and has a grand plan for the universe, they have yet to show themselves. So this is all just a concept and an idea with no basis in fact. And as we have found more facts about the nature of reality and the world itself, it seems more and more preposterous with every day. Every day the scientists come up with these new equations that show the way the universe could have possibly been formed, and every day that these guys at the CERN laboratory, the Large Hadron Collider, are discovering these what were at one time theoretical particles, showing them to be true and their calculations to be correct. We have a deeper and deeper understanding of the universe. But we think now, we love to think that right now that we're filled with knowledge, and we love to look at ourselves now and look at the past as well. They didn't know back then, but we know now. But if we looked in the past, they would have the same ideas. Exactly. They would look back at those poor monkey people with the bananas, and they go, those fucking dummies, they didn't even know houses yet.
Again, his logical approach to this, and I will call it because it's his logic, is that everything that has been was always looked at as a lack. And so today we have tons, and people in the future looking back will think we have a lack, and so on and so forth. And yes, track records do prove that people back in a certain era did not know about a certain thing, even though it was espoused, but not fully fleshed out. And today we know more than we did yesterday, and tomorrow we'll know more than we did today, and the cycle of education goes on and on and on and on, factually true based on history. But God does not operate in that realm. And I think why we have this bogging down of following of God is that we've replaced the following of God for the knowledge of he existing. If you can prove that he exists, that's about the point at which it stops. And many want to stay that way. And again, you can. That's not a while you're here on earth, you're not going to get any kind of pushback necessarily that would matter. But where you're going to end up might.
We will one day look back at 2015 like, what a bunch of fools, what a bunch of ridiculous people that were still, they had this incredibly complicated society and this wonderful access to information, but yet they were still shackled down by ideology and killing each other over religion and ancient superstitions that dictated their behaviors. Like, what a weird time to be in. They'll look at us now in 2015. They'll say, what a strange time, this adolescent period of enlightenment where they're still they're still concentrating on stupid. And president of the United States can openly talk about God, and no one goes, what is God? What are you saying? Like, what are you saying? Do you think Jesus came back from the dead? What do you think? Do you think someone walked on water? Do you believe in a literal translation? Are you an Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy? Well, the New Testament. No, well, the New Testament was made by Constantine.
Okay. Now, this is the point in the conversation with his people where Joe proves his ignorance when it comes to this history. But of course, you will invest time in learning something that you want to learn about. You will spend time in debunking something that you want to debunk. In his case, he's trying to debunk it without ever having actually investigated, which will be proven out when he speaks to Wes. Because he doesn't understand what the Old Testament showed and how the New Testament fulfilled what the Old Testament showed, he cannot really speak on the subject with any true intelligence. He can't. It's not possible for him. He even says you can't know what you don't know in this interview with Wes Huff. It proves to me that although he says that, he does not believe it. He says you don't know what you can't know what you don't know. Meanwhile, this is him talking about something that he doesn't know as though he knows it. Disclaimer again. I'm not saying he cannot change because God can do whatever God got to do. However, there is no coercion with God. That there is not coercion. There's a presentation of himself, presentation of the information, and there might even be repetitive presentations of himself, but he will not make you follow. It's not going to happen.
Who was a Roman emperor who wasn't even Christian. He didn't even believe it. He became a Christian on his deathbed.
And that's also irrelevant, one, but untrue, secondarily. And again, Wes will show him that this thing that he believes isn't true about it at all. I'm not saying Constantine was the good guy. Don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that Joe has an ability to reason to an extent, but whenever that reasoning crosses his actual belief structure, it gets thrown to the side vis-a-vis his idea about God. His idea of God is rooted somewhere in his psyche from some sort of either a misapplication of the information he has, lack of information he has, or something that happened in his life that has now caused him to emotionally decide this is no God, or it caused him to decide on an emotion, not a logical level. Because remember, his logic is proving stuff out. He also says you can't know what you don't know. But at the same time, he's not willing to really know something, because in this case, to know it means I have to actually implement something outside of paper and parchment and books and other folks. I have to believe it based on something that God said or who God is. He cannot get to that point of who God is because he's too bogged down by what and where can I prove and how can I and if.
Like, that's when he became a Christian. Like, all these people that are like really into the New Testament, and like, I'll talk about Old Testament shit, and people get mad at me on Twitter. They'll send me this hate text. You understand what the difference is between the Old Testament and the New Testament? Because the New Testament is utter. It's created by a bishop and an emperor.
And again, untrue. He said the New Testament is created by a bishop and an emperor. That is not true. And again, Wes shows him this by the facts of papyruses and all these things that he brought to the table to Joe. But it's no coincidence that Joe will have this idea in his head because he doesn't, and this is the facts here, he genuinely hates religion. 1. 2, his disdain for religion has caused him to associate God with religion. There's no disconnect anymore. Okay? Again, I'm not saying God can't work with this man, fix this man, change this man. Not saying no. But Joe has to be willing to want that.
Established religious fact. This established fact. That a bishop and an emperor. That's a fact. That's like established religious fact.
But it's not, though. I mean, technically, it is religious fact. I'll give you that. I will agree that it is indeed religious fact, but it is not factually true. It's not factually true. But he says it as though he knows. This is my problem, is that he knows. And in order for him to say he knows, he has to do his own research, right? At least he prides himself in investigation and learning stuff, knowing. But he's saying something that he obviously doesn't know because, again, he admits it years later talking to Wes.
Like, everyone knows where it came from. And not only that, it was written hundreds of years after the death of Jesus. So what are you talking about? Because if you're talking about the old stuff, you got to go deep. Go to the Dead Sea Scrolls. Go to the most ridiculous aspects of that, and tell me, you basing your life on that?
Yeah, we are. Now, the mere fact that he's talking about the Dead Sea Scrolls, having never read the Dead Sea Scrolls, is crazy to me. That's the crazy part. The fact that he's talking about the Dead Sea Scrolls without knowing and reading the Dead Sea Scrolls that's incredible on its surface, because he admits that he doesn't know it during the conversation with Wes Huff. Wes knows it. Wes reads it. Wes presented him with some parchment pieces to collect and stuff like that, but he does not know. This man doesn't know. But this was, again, him speaking when he believed what at least he espouses he believes what he's saying. I genuinely know he doesn't believe it, but it is one of those things where it fits what he wants to fit, where he does not. If he can find a reason to not believe in God, he'll pick it. And this was that.
Because that's even more preposterous. They found them in clay pots in Qumran, written on animal skins. These people thought the world was flat and the sun was 17 miles away. And we're going to... they did.
I don't recall the people that wrote the papyrus and wrote the scriptures thought that at all. I don't believe they even invested their energies in saying that. However, I do recall them mentioning constellations in the book. So I don't know exactly how he got to this descriptor, but he said it himself. And this is, again, listen carefully to his words, not mine.
It really did. And we're gonna this is how we're gonna live our lives. This is it. This is all the facts we need. The Large Hadron Collider, CERN, Stephen Hawking's quantum physics, Neil deGrasse Tyson, those dudes with their telescopes. No, we're gonna base it on leather skins and charcoal ink.
The problem is, Joe, you are trusting what people believe about what they observe. You are simply trusting people who are building their premises on observation, not fact, just observation. They know it operates a certain way. How it operates, they can probably may tell you a little bit, but the why it operates, they couldn't tell you. They could not. They can go down to atoms and neutron, all that stuff, and tell you that this one opposes that, but why? They don't know. It just does. So no different than us trusting the book, the Bible, is you trusting man telling you stuff that you now consider fact and provable. Because they've replicated it somewhere, somehow they've replicated it. But you can replicate stuff you observe. That's been done before. Me replicating something does not mean I have a full grasp as to the how it happened. You don't have that. All you have is that it does. So even by his own metric of understanding, he does not implement it for where he stands in his understanding.
All right.
Like, really? That's the conversation we're having when we're talking about ideological religions.
That was a thing of beauty, by the way.
Well, thanks.
That was a thing of beauty.
What's what it is. I mean, and people think, well, you're an atheist, you're an asshole, what do you believe in? I had a guy yell at me at a comedy club once because I did this bit about Scientology. I did this bit about Scientology, about watching a Scientology documentary with my mom, who made me go to Catholic school, and how my mom thinks Scientology is ridiculous. I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
Exactly.
And this guy like, yo, what do you believe in? Well, what do you believe in? Like, what, do I have to believe in something?
Right.
Do I have to believe? I believe in everything that's been proven. I believe that this is made out of wood. And when I'm proven wrong,
Right. You change your mind.
yeah,
That's back to the jujitsu thing again.
yeah,
But when you also think about it, what an unbelievable arrogance to think that you know the will of the creator of the universe.
we it's not arrogance to think that.
Universe. You know what he wants you to do. You know where he wants you to put your genitals. I mean, like you said, in philosophy, it's called.
We know that because he told us. Again, Joe, if you don't want to believe it, that's one thing. But to say we have no proof as to how we believe it or why it's ridiculous to believe it, it is no less ridiculous than you believing what science tells you. I keep saying this, science operates in observation. That is factual. They work in observation, and what they observe, they take and they try to replicate. Once they've replicated, then they can say whether or not they can make a derivative from it. Once they've made a derivative from it, they call it their invention. Even if they make an alternate, it's an invention. Take, for instance, the camera. The camera is functioning like both the eyes and the brain. One sees and does what it has to do to translate it into an image, and on film, it becomes the brain. The brain will take whatever is imprinted from the eyes. So the camera is simply a copy, albeit a very weak and, way, 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 way inferior copy of the eyes and brain. But that's where they got it. They got it from the eyes and the brain. They cannot say otherwise. They cannot tell me that they did not get the concept for the camera with the eyes and the brain. The eyes observe and the brain keeps. Even down to the inversion of images coming in. Still, all observation. You proving something exists doesn't mean you know why it exists or how it came to be. You can only speculate about that. And once you've done the speculation, you can choose to believe or not. So it's no different than following God in that respect. The other respect that it is completely different is that God actually exists and can prove himself to you, as opposed to a camera being in existence somewhere that you have not seen. Somebody could tell me I have a 50-foot camera and it can fit in my pocket. Now, logically, I say, well, that doesn't work. But they can just tell, well, it folds up and it can fold up to the size of a Tic Tac box and fit in my pocket. Even then, you're like, well, that's kind of crazy. And then they decide to show you video footage of it. And you say, wow, that's pretty impressive. And so now you believe. Then you come to find out that it was a doctored video and it didn't really happen, but you believed it because you saw it. That's proof.
The problem of induction, or looking at the past resembling the past. And we will look back. There's absolutely no question in my mind that you're correct. And we will say, wow, you believe this. How could we possibly have believed this? But what's interesting to me is we know that will happen. Like, we know that will happen. And it's an opportunity for us to reflect and say, wow, are we being arrogant right now?
Yes, you are. You are indeed being arrogant. But not arrogant in the position that you think you're being arrogant. Your arrogance is coming from dismissing one side because it is not fully fleshed out in your way, which is why God says that the wisdom of man is folly to him, because he doesn't operate in that kind of a proof for proof business. He told you where the proof of him lies. Where is it? He says, God's invisible features been known to man since creation. He told you that everything you see, observe, can't explain is him. So don't tell me he didn't tell me, and don't tell me we don't know because he hasn't said anything. He's told us exactly what it is in the book. But if you don't believe the book, you are at a deficit, because all you can go by is by believing someone else's book.
I mean, because Christianity, at the end of the day, with no proof, everything is mythology. Everything with no proof. With proof, then you examine the proof. It's super simple. And anybody that argues against that is you're just biased. You have your own ideas. If you have some proof that there was a God, that this God had one son and he made this son come down and get the beat out of him and nailed to a board so that we could all have no sin. Can you show me some studies? Can you give it? Do you have a box of evidence that you can pull out and we can examine all the different pieces that points to the undeniable conclusion that that's true?
Yeah, it's called the Bible. Again, you will see a circular reasoning keep popping up in that they're asking for proof. The proof they have is from other people and books, but when we say we have proof from other people and books, that's a different kind of proof. The reason it's a different kind of proof is because if I proved in your mind what I'm talking about, you will be forced inevitably to choose. You will have to decide. Joe is in a place where I don't believe he's not searching. I do believe he's searching, but he's not searching for the right thing. He's searching for the stuff that could prove his mental capabilities useful. And like I said from the beginning, smart individual. Dumb execution, smart individual.
Because if you don't, then it's a myth. Then you're believing mythology. Doesn't mean it's not real, but if you put all your eggs in that basket and you don't have any proof at all, well, you're entering into this weird world where you don't pay attention to it.
Unfortunately, that's not true, though. Because again, if you were to look at how God laid everything out, you pay attention to everything. That's the beauty of the scripture. The scripture itself makes you pay attention to everything. It doesn't cause you to ignore anything. In fact, it makes you so obviously aware of stuff that at everything you look at, it's like, what? And you're wow. And all of it is eye-opening. It doesn't shut you down from anything at all. Like the Bible has never been used, when it's used properly, to shut down investigations. In fact, it beckons you to investigate. It pushes you to. Now, it then makes you investigate with the right premise, for sure, but you do investigate.
Entering into this weird world where you ignore certain aspects of things because you've decided what is and what isn't. That's not thinking. That's not thinking. That's like it's convenient cookie holder placement of ideas. It's not thinking. Because if you're thinking, you can't accept it. If you're thinking, you go, wait, what? He came.
So and I want you to remember this. If you are thinking, you cannot accept the truth of the Bible. Not my words, his. If you are thinking, you cannot accept it. Okay, good. Now, if he genuinely believes that you cannot accept the things of God while thinking, how is Wes proving to him that he's a thinker? Prove God to him. Because he won't believe that Wes is a thinker, or at least not a logical one, because he's believing in God. You get what I'm saying? Now, he said this too some years ago, 12 years ago, around the same time or just a year or two before he said what you just heard.
You know, it's like I think religion serves as an operating system for a lot of people. And if they didn't have religion, you'd have to explain shit to them. And that could get so tiresome. It would get so tiresome to sit around with some blundering moron, you know, pontificating on what it means to have a finite life in an infinite universe and what.
See, but the problem is not all people that believe it are blundering idiots. Case in point, Wesley Huff. Wesley Huff is not a blundering idiot. He's a very intelligent human being who has studied stuff, Joe, that you've never taken the time to study. You've taken the time to study things that you love and like and want to believe. You will probably not go investigate God, because investigating God means that you have to park quite a few things on the side. And parking those things on the side means for you then that you have to make adjustments. And not just regular adjustment. We're talking about adjustments of the heart, adjustments of behavior, adjustments of thought processes, adjustment of what you believe and who you believe. All those adjustments are not something Joe is willing to do. At least not yet.
What part of, you know, this part of this experience you really do play? What part do you play? And what is your consciousness all about? And why are you so scared of it shutting off? You know, those are scary, terrifying questions for the average person. And, you know, maybe like, you know, maybe some ditch digger dude doesn't need to know that. Maybe there's some dudes who have some, I believe there's people that have brains that work way better than mine. I've seen it. I've talked to people that it's not just a matter of education. It's a matter of, some people are gifted. You know, there's some people have little tiny hands, and then there's people that are built like Shaquille O'Neal, and he could grab them and crush them. And it's not fair. It doesn't make any sense, but it's just the way it is.
So he admits that there are people who are smarter than him, who know more. Yet and still, he speaks from a position of such grounding that his beliefs are 100% true. And you cannot be a logically smart thinking individual if you believe the God thing. So again, he has a bunch of reasoning that doesn't apply to himself. He does not apply the same measure of proof that he wants from everybody else to himself. He will not do that. You see, people want to find out about God. If you genuinely trust your grounding, you can investigate it without a single change. You can. Joe is one of those people that wants everything to be proven either by a chart, by an investigation, by a scientific finding, paperwork, something like that. And anyone who trusts something that they cannot fully prove is a monkey or a moron or a dummy to him. You got to be slow. You got to be special. Something that you want to read the book and believe it. You think everything that happened there is real. But the difference is, Joe, if you aren't going the same way you invest time in the what you call it, the Hadron Collider and CERN, the same information, and you spend time on stars, you spend time talking to people about evolution, you spend time talking to people about bombs, about all this stuff, the way you spend time doing that, what would happen if you were to see for yourself if what people were saying about the Bible was true? Just a thought.
And I think that there's some people that they're living in this life as humans, but yet they're not quite human. They're like just below human.
I want you to make sure you listen as to why the just below human thing is said. Just wait.
Like you talk to them and you're like, so what do you think happens when you die? Well, man, for sure you go to heaven and you get to be with Jesus. Yeah. Well, I've believed this since I was a child. Yeah. And you're talking to them, and you know there's like a weird disconnect with a person. Like they talk, and it's not even that they're not. It's like this. I've met some really intelligent Christians. Don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there's certain people that are just really dumb.
Okay.
And they really aren't capable of thinking about deep shit. They're not.
Okay, good. So they're not capable of it. If you have the belief structure, like I do, that I don't have to prove all the things in the Bible, and there are certain things about God that I accept based on faith, I am a dummy. And that's completely fine for people to think. I have no problem people thinking that, because let's look at it this way. Didn't God say the same thing? Didn't God say it? I'm pretty sure he says it in the book, right? Right? He says it. And so you have to agree with Joe that by the world standards, we are stupid. We're fools. Right? But I don't mind being that. So he's completely correct that you can talk to us, and sometimes we'll say some stuff that seems completely ridiculous to you. But we're not talking to you based on a humanistic standpoint. We are speaking to you based on what we've encountered and known about God. And since God already told us that people like Joe are going to consider us dummies, you should be happy that he is seeing exactly what God said should be shown to prove him.
Not capable of pondering the really insane question of what the fuck this life is. They're not capable of it. So religion, I've always felt, is like a nice scaffolding for people like that. It lets them experience all the benefits of being a positive person and being a giving and loving person. You know, we all experience those benefits. You know, it's just they're teaching them to do it in the way that it's transcribing the wishes of some holy master who created you. And I said it once, I'm not fucking saying it again. Write it down. This is what you do it, or else you go to hell. It's like, it's almost like it's structured.
It is structured. You are right. Now, again, if you guys have a problem with his speech, that's not on me. You need to grow a pair a little bit, because people out there speak the way they speak. And if you're called to speak to them, you got to be able to hear them out and listen to what they're saying, regardless of how they deliver it. Okay. Joe, I will give him this too. Joe does not change who he is based on his audience. He never will. That's the one consistent thing I've seen about him. It doesn't matter who he's standing before, sitting before, talking with, speaking about, or to. He does not change how he speaks. Either you take it or you don't. It's not a middle ground. There's no, okay? So if that's a problem, yeah, you might want to be worried. And yes, there is a mad amount of structure to God's kingdom. If it wasn't structured, it'd be chaos, and chaos is not of him. He is a very, very meticulous God. Whether you believe in flat earth or round earth or anything like that, even to the scientific answers of a flat earth and round earth, there is no denying that 100% of both flat and round is calculated down to the minuscule, minute detail of it. Whether or not it's flat or round, and it's rotating at a 35 degree, 50 degree, 45 degree, it don't matter what it's doing if it's round, and it don't matter if it's just sitting there flat. The mere fact that it is doing either is still proof of God. That's why I don't care about either direction of it. If it's round and just millimeters or even micro inches of it just goes off, all of us die by their calculations. If it's flat, there is no explanation how we can do the things we're doing on it. We can just observe. Either way, God did it, and we can't explain it.
To make the idiots like have a really simple moral path. Like, it gives you a nice little story to.
What's wrong with a simple moral path? He didn't even say a simple immoral path or a simple stupid path. It's a simple moral path. And how is that bad? If I'm okay, let's say, for instance, that religion and God is all man-made. Let's say it is. Let's say that some guy way back in the day wrote such a great thing that people are now talking about it to this day. Okay, let's say, and that what he has written down is something that, wow, man, wow, ooh, wow. Let's just say it is. If it's moral, how is it bad? If it is moral, how is it bad? If it's causing me to hold to a good set of morals, where's the downside?
To explain the really weird but real complexities of love and positive thinking, and how it shapes lives, and how your intention shapes lives, and your imagination shapes your life, and how this thing is malleable and it's not understood. this life that we're living is simply not understood. That's too fucking weird for some people. They can't handle that. That's not getting in there. That's going to their ear and bouncing off like it hit a fucking trampoline. So for some people, religion allows them to be on a good path. It allows them to, to do good and to experience the result of that, even though they're doing it, because of some fictional character.
Okay, Joe, prove to me anything about the first men and women that roamed Earth. Just do it. Prove anything to me. Prove it. Prove anything about the first man and woman on Earth. I bet you will have to go to paper. I bet you have to go to stones. I bet you have to go to what other people say happened to know what happened. I bet you. So it's not that you can't take other people's words that you have not observed. You do take their word. You just trust that particular thing because it fits what you innately to yourself believe already. It's no different than Christians today, right? That read into the Bible and not out of the Bible. They read to confirm their biases the same way Joe investigates to confirm his bias. As much as he said he's watching and trying to get all kinds of knowledge and he's trying to get information, he's making sure he explores both sides. Joe doesn't do that. And it'd be okay if he admits that, like I do it. I will invest everything. I'll invest time in investigating all kinds of stuff, but I weigh it against the Bible. So I already have a bias, and I know my bias, and I love my bias. I have no problem with my bias. Everything is filtered through what I know about God. So if it's not filtered through that, then I don't really have a grounding, and I'm looking for one. But there's still something I'm filtering it through. I'm looking for something.
It's like they're still doing they're doing the correct things. It's like when religion gets nutty, when you get into like the Inquisition or stabbing cartoon makers because they drew your guy, when religion goes completely off the tracks like that, that's when it becomes a problem. But I think that's not the majority of religious people. I think the majority of religious people probably benefit from it in a sense of like community, for sure. Churches are a big part of neighborhoods and communities. It's a big part of how people interact with each other. And if you could find something that was a religion where, it made sense to you, if it was a logical religion, it actually...
It can't be both. It can't be both, Joe. It can't be both. I want to have you listen to what he just said again and tell me if it makes sense.
It made sense to you if it was a religion where, it made sense to you.
If my religion makes sense to me, okay, I want you to understand, if my religion makes sense to me, how you view what I view is inconsequential. But then he puts this caveat.
If it was a logical religion.
If it was a logical religion. But by whose standards are you weighing this logical conclusion? Your own. But if you're telling me to find something that I believe in, but you still have a problem with Christians believing what they believe, then you don't really agree with your own thought process, Joe. They have to find something that makes sense as long as it's making sense to your liking. Now that you have the concept of what Joe believes, let's listen to what he said and the questions he's asked. Now, remember, the whole conversation with him and Wes was this idea of history of the books and what this and what that and how things pan out. And then he initially started with the Billy Carson thing. And so the whole conversation was a whole lot about books and intelligence and smarts and learning and all this stuff, right? And then comes these questions about the Bible. I might disappear from the screen for a second too.
Are there any books that were decided, and how do they pick the order that these stories are in the Bible? And are there any books that were excluded?
Like where
Yes.
there's debate on it.
Yeah, great question. So this is the issue of what's sometimes called the canon of scripture.
Right.
So very early on, when you have Christians having these conversations, the four gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, there's unanimous agreement about those. Particularly, and that's not to say that there aren't other gospels that pop up. It's that you have this chain of custody that goes back to the earliest Jesus community. Jesus has disciples, and there's a group of individuals who we call the apostolic fathers, who are the disciples of Jesus's disciples. And so they comment on the books that the disciples of Jesus, or that people within the community of the disciples of Jesus, wrote. And so we actually have a very close connection to the time. And we see early on.
Are there any
Sorry, muted again because this heater is making noise. No, if you're talking about Wes is not gay. No. He's a nerd, absolute, unadulterated nerd, like real big nerd. So he speaks very articulately, but this is just how he speaks. And he's Canadian. But no, he's not gay. Not at all. Not gay. That's if you're talking about Wes. But no, Wes is not gay. But big time nerd. He admits that. He's like, he loves being the nerd, and he'll talk about stuff, and that's just how he speaks. But he's a very light spoken person. He's not one of those loud, rah kind of guys. But no, not gay. No, not gay. So now, clip 2. The other question that he's about to ask. Okay. Now, this is kind of an explanation of the statements about the book, kind of, Yeah, and Joe ain't gay either.
And so these books that were not included, are any of them interesting? I mean,
They're all interesting.
But does any of it seem like it belongs in the New Testament?
Well, so part of the problem with some of these other books is they appear to be almost completely reliant on the other books.
Mm-hmm.
So you do have, and some of them have an agenda to them. So like the docetic Gospel of Peter seems to be uncomfortable with the fact that the biblical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, have women being the first witnesses to the empty tomb. Because in the ancient world, women were not seen as good eyewitnesses. So you almost have this apologetic trying to solve that problem by having all the right people be witness to the resurrection. So you have all the Roman and Jewish officials camping out in front of the tomb, which also gives away the fact that like no Jewish priest on the eve of Passover is going to be camping out in front of a dead body.
Okay. So what he's doing, and this is why I say he's handling Joe the way Joe needs to be handled, which is why I think it's a good thing he had a conversation with him. My issue is that with Joe, all you're doing is feeding into exactly where he likes being. Info. It's all info. None of it is heart touching. In terms of your approach, none of it is going to get through because I know this only because I've been through. The mind is like a trap, and it will hold on to stuff and try to regurgitate it and go over it again to make it make logical sense. There is no, and I'll say this, and this may sound bad, but people listen. There is no human logic to what God did. Let's just be honest about one thing. What God did and who God is not humanly factual, humanly sane. It is not. It is insane to believe the book. We can be frank about this. Okay? Nothing about what God did seems logical to man. So why would I try to make it make sense by man's standards? I can't. He never asked me to. Never did. He never once said, you know what you should do? You should try to make this make sense. I want you to hear this one here now, okay?
Are there any books that were decided, and how do they pick the order that these stories are in the Bible? And are there any books that were excluded, like where
Yes.
there's debate on it?
Yeah, great question. So this is the issue of what's sometimes called the canon of scripture.
Right.
So very early on, when you have Christians having these conversations, the four gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, there's unanimous agreement about those. Particularly, and that's not to say that there aren't other gospels that pop up. It's that you have this chain of custody that goes back to the earliest Jesus community. Jesus has disciples, and there's a group of individuals who we call the apostolic fathers, who are the disciples of Jesus's disciples. And so they comment on the books that the disciples of Jesus, or that people within the community of the disciples of Jesus, wrote. And so we actually have a very close connection to the time. And we see early on.
Are there any books?
Again, going into much detail about the info, the details, the wording, the history. Joe loves that. He thrives there. That is where Joe's bread and butter is in the logical side. And I use that term only by his terms, logical side of a conversation. If it cannot be borne out in some sort of a chart or visual proof or something of the kind, he will not subscribe to it. He just won't. He simply can't, really. It's not even that he really won't. He can't subscribe to it. A subscription to it would mean that he has to believe it. Now comes to the meat and potatoes of the conversation, because it wasn't until the end of the chat that they had where Wes asks this particular question. And I want you to know, watch how Joe normally speaks when it's something he believes. And he totally says he has command of it. He speaks a certain way. His body, he portrays himself in a very interesting light while talking about subject matters that he said he involved in, he's investigated, researched, knows, and believes. But the question here is about to stump him.
That, time frame, so we can look and see, okay, well, Luke, whoever Luke is getting this from, he's adding this detail. Maybe he's not even aware of the significance of it, but whoever he's getting this from has been there, because they actually know what tree would have been growing there and tell him that Zacchaeus climbs a sycamore tree. And so it's like fauna and flora and distance between locations, things that actually other ancient writers get wrong sometimes.
Have you ever had a debate with a snarky atheist?
Yeah.
I think that would be
like
fun.
Like a formal debate?
No, not even a formal debate. I think it would be a fascinating conversation, because I'm sure, atheists, they vary just like Christians vary, but the worst versions of them are essentially believers in the religion of atheism.
Right.
They worship the concept of there being no God, and this is it. When you die, nothing happens.
Yeah.
And that to me is always so arrogant. Just the fact that you exist at all is so bizarre and so spectacular. The idea that for sure that when the lights shut out, that's a wrap, because there's no evidence of the contrary. Well, okay.
But in his prior videos, he mentions that if you believe that about going to heaven, that's also stupid. He says to say that there isn't anything is dumb. But he says to say that there is something is also dumb. When I told you he doesn't follow his own logic, he's about to prove it in the next statement right here.
Kind of assuming your conclusion there.
Absence of evidence is not evidence.
There you go. So the absence of evidence isn't evidence. Meanwhile, you have come to a conclusion that you say is based on evidence about heaven when you have no evidence at all of it. Which is why I tell you he does not believe most of the times what he's saying, but he has to say it in order to keep what little he does believe to his chest. He doesn't want to know God. He likes finding out about what people talked about God. He likes knowing about the history of people who do follow God. He loves the historical and the architectural and all of the biometrics and all. He loves that stuff. But really believing something?
Especially when you're talking about something that's as bizarre as death.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you have people that have near-death experiences that are radically similar.
Yeah.
Those are really weird. They're really weird how many similarities people have in these near-death experiences from accidents and all sorts of things that people, come back from, where their heart stops beating. They see themselves above their body. There's a lot of weirdness to it.
And it is considered weirdness by many standards, yes. But Joe, I just want you to stay consistent. If you cannot prove something without proof or disprove something without proof, then you saying hands down, 10 toes flat-footed, that heaven is a stupid and ludicrous idea and is made for people who are slow and remedial to find hope, then you've done the exact same things you just accused extreme atheists of doing, which is drawing a conclusion about something that you have no proof of and really harping on the fact that it's true. You're no different. Like, at all, are you any different? Let's get to another section here.
And why do we have this insatiable desire to learn and know more?
Yeah.
What is it?
Why does this, however many 3 pounds of gray matter in my brain,
Mhm.
why is that able to plummet the intricacies of the universe?
Right.
Right. Like, and I think that's ultimately the questions that we should be asking in terms of, you matter more than you are matter. There's
Mhm.
something going on.
There's
there.
something going on with all of us.
Yeah.
We kind of know it. We don't know it, but it's just, you can't measure it and you can't put it on a scale. And so people don't like that.
Yeah.
They don't like that. It makes them feel dumb to believe in that. It makes them feel dumb to even speculate, to even just
what?
say, what do you think happens when you die? Like,
Yeah.
But okay, again, remember I told you, you said that if you believe in this, I'm going to heaven, you make fun of them and you said they're dumb to believe that that is what's going to happen to you. Where's your proof? But then now during this interview, you said it would make people feel dumb if they do. They feel dumb if they question it, but you call them dumb for questioning it. I don't understand where you're getting this. Okay, so maybe I'm confusing myself. So you said that if you believe in this heaven thing, you're a dummy. But you said of the atheist, if you said there is no heaven thing, then you're a dummy too, because you can't disprove something without proof, or you can't believe something, you can't know something you don't know. And what you're now you're saying that people don't want to come across looking stupid for believing something, almost as though you don't think they should be seen as stupid for believing in heaven, but you've also called them stupid for believing in heaven.
even that conversation is like, people don't like that. Nothing. It goes dark and that's it. It's over. That's it. You die. Like, how the fuck do you know? Have you died?
That's my point. But you have said the same thing. There is nothing there. We heard you.
Like, you don't know.
In all of this, what do you think of Jesus? Like,
okay, here we go.
Like, in terms of your own journeying and trying to find answers to ultimate questions, what do you think of the historical person of Jesus?
Well, now, here it comes. This is at the end of a 3-hour conversation. Okay, this is at mile marker 305. Okay, 305. They're at right now. 3 hours, 5 minutes in. Well, 3 hours, 6 minutes in, and 4 seconds. For the last 3 hours, they've been discussing books, ancient language, ancient texts, the corroboration of those things, whether or not it's legit, not legit. That's what they've been discussing. So Wes finally brings the question to him. What do you think about this Jesus person? I remember I asked you to take a look at how Joe normally speaks. He's very direct. He's very direct, very straight. There's no lots of fumbling to find his answers. He talks about the question you asked him. He does not deflect to go to something else. This is him, okay? We all know that about Joe. Now he gets asked about Jesus.
Well, it certainly seems like there's a lot of people that believe that there was this very exceptional human being that existed. So the question is, what does that mean? Does it mean he was the son of God? Does it mean he was just some completely unique human being that had this vision of humanity and this way of...
He refuses to watch Wes. He does not watch Wes. He was staring at him intently before all this. But now he's wandering off into his thought process when asked about God. He says, what do you think about Jesus? Well, I am here and I'm thinking and people and, with the why and the how and the weather and watch, it gets worse.
Educating people and spreading this ideology that would ultimately change the way human beings interact with each other forever. So what is...
But there's no answer. So far, he has not answered the questions. Again, he's very good at answering these questions, very direct. He is always very direct. He doesn't waste time with questions. He just answers them. He'll answer and then he may add an extra stuff, but he answers it. He didn't yet, not yet.
Is he the son of God? Well, are we all? That's...
And there we go. There we go. He cannot answer the question because he himself has not taken any time to figure out what he actually believes about it. But what he does and fully is capable of saying out loud is that I don't believe it. Why don't you believe it? I don't know why, but I just don't believe it.
That's another question, right? Do we all have that inside of us? Do we all have that ability to change everything around us inside of us? Do we all have that unique connection to the divine? And is he a representation of the best version of that? Or was he an actual person that was the son of God? And is it important?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So he doesn't know. He doesn't know. In all of his investigation, he even had a sit down with Candace Owens way back then and said the same thing. Follow religion, you're a dummy. If you think Jesus did this whole raising from the dead thing, you're also a dummy. But now he's pressed about what he believes about it. He doesn't know. Did he raise from the dead? Don't know. But you said unequivocally before that it's impossible. Why would you take something so literally from a book? Why would you do that? Wes's reply is interesting as well.
I mean, what does it mean? It's just the fact that it's a question to ponder is a miracle in itself.
Not really. The fact that it's a question to ponder is a miracle? No, it's not. If you genuinely believe that the human mind is different than every other animal, us questioning things is the least of the miraculous things you could think of. In fact, I would probably consider that one of the first things you would have to do is question the things about God, right? So it's not miraculous. It should be the first thing you do. Because the flesh doesn't want to have to obey God. So the first thing you'll do is question it. Again, very smart individual, but the analytical logic, Doesn't always kick in.
in a way. Just the fact that there's this concept of this person that died for our sins as the Son of God, but you have to you have to believe in a bunch of stuff to go that way. Like, just the concept of that is interesting to people, because what it can do to people is offer them a very unique way to change the way they feel about the world itself.
But that's not Christianity. Christianity is not a way to change the viewpoint of the Christian on the world. The Christian, by nature, understands that nothing in the world is worth it. What he's talking about is a spiritualistic type of approach to God that has no bearing in Scripture. He told us the ways of mankind. We're not confused by mankind. That's not us. He told us how we operate. We're not confused by that either. God's very logistical and clear on everything he says. Though there's no confusion on the side of the Christian about anything to do with mankind whatsoever. None. No, absolute. That's the last thing a Christian is concerned or even confused about. Very last thing.
And if you do follow that, I know a lot of Christians are hardcore Christians. They're some of the nicest people you'll ever meet in your life. So it does work. You right? Like, if you do live like a Christian and you do follow the principles of Christ, you will have a richer, more love-filled life.
But you said it was dumb. So let me give you the benefit of the doubt that your mindset changed. You didn't say that either, though. He's very good at correcting himself on provable things. So if he says, "Oh, that wasn't true," yeah, I correct myself. That's factual. He will do that, but he doesn't admit it here. He doesn't admit that he said that believing that stuff is crazy. He said it, not me.
So it is true, right? But you have to submit to this concept that this guy was the child of God who came down to earth, let himself be crucified, came back from the dead, explained a bunch of stuff for people, and then said, "All right, see you when I come back."
And that's the okay. I'll give you okay. Look, simplistic, yes. Factual, yes. Overly simplistic, yes. So simplistic that you've missed the point completely. Just said a bunch of stuff. It was not a bunch of stuff, Joe. The stuff he says was so relevant to even to today. It wasn't just a bunch of stuff that he said. In the words that Jesus spoke was the fulfillment of papers written thousands of years before him. In the words of Jesus himself, he left a mark that would go and ripple back and front. And not for the reasons of mankind's logic, but for the reasons that he set forth, which is to bring and reconcile man back to him. It is more than just the forgiveness of sins, like a day pass or a hall pass. That is not how this works.
And you don't know how you can wrap your head around that particular claim.
And if he came back, here's the thing. If he came back, who the fuck would believe him today? With all the fake news and all the CGI and AI, like, imagine that would be the most bizarre thing of all time. If we get to a point where artificial reality is indiscernible from regular reality and Jesus chooses to come back at that moment, boy, that's the ultimate test of faith.
Let's say he's right, that God comes back, okay? And when he comes back, people will believe it's AI. Well, on Joe's side, that would make sense. A believer's side, it wouldn't, because he told you everybody would know. Trust me, when he shows up, you will not be thinking AI, CGI, holographics, mind control, hallucinations, too much drugs, too much. You will not be thinking that. Why? Because every fiber of your being will know. Every portion, crevice, crack, neuron, cell, all of it will know. There'll be no question about whether it's you'll know. He said so.
Faith, right? When it's impossible to discern. If we really reach a point where virtual reality is indistinguishable from regular reality, which
Right.
we're probably 100 years away from that or something. Like how far, maybe not even that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's probably why Jesus came in the 1st century and not the 21st century.
And there's where Wes let me down. That statement is why Wes let me down. For all of the intelligence that he also possesses, he failed at the most important and critical juncture in this discussion. That statement right there. Which proves more than anything to me that all the information you can possess only takes you so far. No sealing of the deal. No shutting down this nonsensical claim that Joe has just put out. That was disappointing.
But imagine if that's the big catch. Like Jesus does return, but when he returns, we're just so confused that we can't even tell.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's how he returns in the first place. Maybe he returns through AI.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the portal to Jesus.
I don't know anything about that. Yeah, I mean,
that scares the shit out of me.
I really appreciate, guys that you're friends with, right? Like the Jordan Petersons and the Douglas Murrays of the world,
Mhm.
or, the Tom Hollands, not the Spider-Man actor, the historian, who talk about this stuff. I think I really like the way that Jordan Peterson articulates it, but I think he misses the forest for the trees.
How so?
In that he sees Jesus as an archetype.
Mm.
And I don't think actually even Jesus gives you the opportunity to see him as the archetype. Because I have this love-hate relationship with all of Peterson's stuff, because he seems to get so much right where he walks up to the line, but he doesn't want to cross over.
Kind of like you just did with Joe. Kind of like you just did with Joe. You failed in your mission to reach Joe's heart. You managed to facilitate his mind. You managed to facilitate his conversation, but you failed miserably at concreting for Joe the other side, which is the more consequential side: salvation. So now Joe has a whole lot more info. Yes. He's more learned about ancient text. Yes. But did you present him with Jesus? No. You present him with the man called Jesus, his existence, where he walked, where he moved, places he's been to, people he spoke about, how the paperwork that we have now bears out that is historical to the point where everybody, yes, good, perfect, awesome. But when Joe said what he said about God coming back and AI, and he was like, yeah. Oh, I don't know anything about that. No, but you should know something about that. And instantaneously shut him down. You can do this. This is how I would approach it. And everybody know this would be true if I said it. He would have said AI would be the way God's coming back. I said, if you believe that God's going to come back using AI, Joe, every bit of smart I thought you were has just been debunked. Because if you do believe in intelligent design, then mankind was given the information mentally to come up with the concept of AI. And even if God turns in and comes up, you will not believe it's AI because he is bigger than that. But no one wants to discuss that with Joe. That would bring a whole different discussion. And instead of saying, yeah, I know nothing. No, he will not be using man-made options to present himself at the end of time. He says this in the book, and since we've just gone through all of the variants that I could possibly do it, I've shown you text, cross-references, I've shown you names, I've shown you historical pieces, I've shown you maps, I have shown you everything logically, Joe. This is where logic on your end leaves the table. When God says in his book, since we've had it translated now for thousands of years, that when he comes back, every eye will see and every tongue will have to confess and everybody will bow the knee. Everyone, there's no AI involved in that. No AI at all involved in that. Plain and simple. No AI. This is why I don't believe that what happened with him and Wes was going to change Joe's mind. Again, love the fact that Billy got put in his place by Wes. I love the fact that, yes, he went to talk to Joe, but he left out the most important critical part of the belief structure of Christians. And that is that our belief is not based on proving this and proving that, and this book, this and that. Our belief structure is based on God himself. The mere fact that Wes can prove out that his word endured is proof that I can believe and should believe everything God said, which includes heaven, hell, life, death, saved, unsaved. So for as good of a job that Wes did, ultimately, I think he not just dropped the ball on one spot. I could say, no, this was a massive, monumental failure on his part. Massive, ridiculously huge failure. Failure of the kinds that would make the entire 3-hour live inconsequential in hindsight. And yes, okay, so let's say, well, maybe he's just making sure that he can go back and talk to him. What if you never get the chance? What if that was your only option to talk to him about it and make it known to him that, Joe, listen, I love you having me on your podcast, bro, dude. But while you have all this knowledge, knowledge will be worthless to you in the grave. All the money, all the traveling, worthless in the grave, Joe. Completely worthless. Joe, what you think about God matters in the long run. Joe, what you believe about happens to you after death matters in the long run. Joe, this cannot be left up to your logical mind as a human. God doesn't operate on the human level. He operates on his own level, and it's far above our understanding. It says so right there in the book. Joe, I can't leave here until I tell you that he is calling for your attention. He is struggling to make sure you know him. And when I say struggle, I don't mean it's a hardship. I mean, he is really, really, really trying to reach you, Joe. Joe, all you know will be inconsequential in the light of salvation. And your thought process about Jesus matters. If I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that your belief here will actually hinge on your end game. I can't tell you enough that you need to accept him. I can't tell you that enough, Joe. You said you're not sure about whether you just disappear into the ether or you go to heaven or go to hell. You don't know, but you're not willing to at least explore the avoidance of all of it. And it's an unfortunate thing. You see, I did watch portions of it, but don't forget, too, that Mel is a staunch Catholic, and his belief structure will not reflect the actual gospel. Love the fact that he can portray the death of Christ in that movie, The Passion. Love the movie. I get it. Depictions of it, all that good stuff. Yeah, okay. But even in that, you saw a bunch of Catholic symbolism come through the movie. Didn't need it, but that's who he is. But with Wes, who claims to be a Christian, not Catholic, a Christian, he missed a mad opportunity to have Joe hear exactly the love of God. He missed it, man. He missed a massive opportunity. And based on all Joe's history and what Joe believes and how Joe talks and how Joe functions, he's not coming to Christ from that conversation. He's coming to more knowledge of what the book started with, who it was and why the books are out, why did this and why did that, but not the God aspect. I'm not saying he couldn't. I'm not saying he won't. And I'm not saying he did. I'm not saying any of that. I told you at the beginning, I'm judging based on what I've heard from Joe, seen of Joe, and can attest to that he believes by his own words. And from his own words, he indeed has yet to be convinced. He is yet to be convinced. And his conviction is not going to happen anytime soon if his mindset remains the way it is. I put Joe in the same role as I do Agrippa, okay? Because if you remember, Agrippa was a very intelligent, aware official, right? He was very aware. And this is what had to be said before I close here. Now, as he thus made his defense, Festus said with a loud voice, Paul, you are beside yourself. Much learning is driving you mad. And I wish this was what Wes had said to Joe. He said, I'm not mad, most noble Festus, but I speak the words of truth and reason for the king, before whom I freely speak. But Joe, before I freely speak, knows these things. For I am convinced that none of these things escape his attention, since this thing was not done in a corner. King Agrippa, do you believe the prophets? I know that you do believe. Then Agrippa said to Paul, you almost persuade me to become a Christian. And Paul said, I would to God that you not only you, but also all who hear me today might become both almost and altogether such as I am, except for these chains. Now, if Wes had just said that, I wish that you would come to the same knowledge of Christ that I have. Because now you know all this stuff, right? You have all this info, you know now. But I wish that you would come to that, just that, Joe. But that didn't happen. Didn't happen. I do hope that Joe does come around, not for the sake of the crowd or anything, but for his own sake. But he has to be willing and allow it. And I don't know that he's allowing it. I don't know. But I have to say, based on what we saw here, aren't we all gods? And Wes didn't push back on that either. Don't we all have some God in us? Don't we all have God? Aren't we all that? No pushback. I understand, Wes, you don't want to be contentious on the man's platform, but Are you willing to let something like that be solidified in his mind, knowing you have the truth? Upset him, flip the cart, piss him off, have him kick you off the program, but stand on that conviction. Stop him, say, well, no, 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 no. We are not all gods. No, we're not. No, only God is God. We are not all God. You can continue now, but we're not doing that. I'm here to give you the information I have, and I do have historical information, yes, but we are not all gods, partner. Don't be. I'm not going to sit here and endure what you just said as though it's okay. It's blasphemy, and I cannot stand by it. He didn't do that. Overall, great information if you are a historian or a linguist. Great information. But trying to make somebody see who and what God is, he didn't do a good job at all. Not at all. I listened to the whole 3 hour plus one. He did not solidify God to Joe. He solidified the information about the books that were about God to Joe. That will never happen. Never. I am telling you now, that never happened. No. I'm going to tell you right now, ain't no way would Joe ever invite me onto that platform. Pigs flying in tutus, wearing tap shoes and Birkenstocks under the tap shoes, in a limousine, on fire, while freezing will have to happen before Joe invites me to that platform. Never gonna happen. 2 reasons. I'm too small, and 2, it will not be a backing down situation. And it's just too smooth to say because God said so. And that would aggravate him because it's too simplistic. My point stands the same. Will not happen. will not happen. Okay. Nope. It ain't. It's the same reason people don't just randomly show up on Too Strong. They look, Corey is bad by himself. I'm bad by myself. But 2 of us, you gonna have one hard head time trying to deal with both of us coming in here with stupidity. Look. This is not a braggadocious thing. We just don't take stupidity for answers, and we don't take genuflecting for answers. We don't take side. We want answers. Either answer me or shut up. They will never come on this one, invite us. No, it's why Roland Martin never invited Too Strong, never responded. It's why Tatum never responded. It's why none of the people we talk about ever respond, knowing full well they've seen our videos. I know full well y'all seen them. No one will respond to that. Why? And it's not because we know so much. It's because what we do know, we stand on. We're not budging. We know it. We just know it. And what we don't know, we believe. I ain't playing that game with nobody. I'm not about to let you sit there and blaspheme and stuff. Not fine. No. And that would be the one part where I'll be like, you're going to have to kick me for me to accept that. You're going to have to kick me, Joe. Not happening. Never happened. Never will. Nope. He can come with his book. chapter, verse. You'll never find it. He'll never come on Straight Talk. Never. You will never see me, Gino Jennings. I've been appointed by God. Amen. Amen. Yes. You'll never see that happen, bro. Nope. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. You'll never see that happen here, bro. Never. Nope. I'm not hoping for it neither. No. Oh, maybe if I played some jazz might happen too. Yeah. You might call him on and say, hey, I'm playing jazz today. You gonna come? Are you playing jazz? I'll be there. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Yes. 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 I love jazz. I know it's a sin, but I still love it. Yes. In either case, you're going to have to wait for tomorrow because tomorrow's another big one, and I'm going to talk about it. Anybody going to show up for it because it's too big, but we'll talk about it tomorrow, and I won't announce it until you look on the platform tonight. This week is going to be more of a philosophical thing. I'm feeling in that mood right now because the conversations in my head are kind of along those veins. So we'll be talking about it. Hallelujah! Sorry, I also got to do the hallelujah, hallelujah. You got to make sure you get all them antics in if you're going to talk like Gino. Hey, yes, believe it, hallelujah. Yeah. Like you're having Tourette's or something. Like, get that check, bro. Get some meds. Something wrong with you. In any case, woo! That man, bro. That man. Oh. Now, will I ever have a conversation with Wes? That probably won't happen either because I did reach out to him on Instagram. Didn't get nothing back. I reached out to him on YouTube. Nothing back. Email, nothing. I said, I'm not expecting that either. He says he doesn't have the time for it. So I'm not worried about that. But I understand that it's easier to avoid the conflict and save it for another day, but we're not guaranteed tomorrow. And when you have the opportunity, use it. Okay, Wes, just some advice for future. If you're sitting with somebody that says the kind of stuff Joe says, correct them on the spot because you don't know if you have the next 5 minutes and you don't know if you have the tomorrow to talk to them about it. You don't know. You don't know. You don't know. Greater works, greater works, greater works. Yes, greater works. In any case, we'll catch you guys tomorrow. Scrolling at the bottom, you know what to do. I'm going to try and leave this heater on down here, and hopefully by the time I get around to Savage Patriots, it'll be warm. We'll see. Or might still be wearing this jacket. We'll see. So in either case, love you guys. Mean it. Go talk to the author about what's scrolling at the bottom, and we will catch up with you later on today on Savage Patriots, and quite possibly a Too Strong Live tonight. Wisdom calls to you from the streets, so please, 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 please find wisdom. Peace.
Hold tight the dreams, for if dreams die, rely on yourself and no